Well, I'm here to review step number 9 of the 67 steps, the 67 different frameworks and ideas and ways of thinking that you need to live the good life, as Ty calls it: health, wealth, love, and happiness. This one was called Warren Buffett's Book a Day Diet and Making War with a Multitude of Counselors. Why billionaires read a lot. And of course, this one was no surprise. Central theme of this one was books. And one of the things that really turned me on to the Tai Lopez brand and his content was his love for reading, because I've always loved reading. Tai explains that he's been an avid reader since he was 3 years old. And again, he says the key thing you always want to remember is the overarching idea within all of the 67 steps, and that's awareness. To be aware of what successful people tend to do and what unsuccessful people tend to do. Tai explains how over the years he's tended to notice that very successful people, very influential people, the extremely wealthy, tend to be readers, and his poor friends that he's around and other unsuccessful people tend to not read and just presume that they know it all, even though their life doesn't reflect that. So we always want to, as Tai says, take the best and leave the rest. So success leaves clues, and we want to copy the successful people, and we want to do the opposite of the unsuccessful people. Tai references that an independent interview was done at one point with Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, both of which have held the title multiple times of world's richest man. And the interviewer asked, if you could have a superpower, what would it be? And they both answered that they'd be the world's fastest readers. So although that seems kind of nerdy, you can't help but admire their impact on the world. And they're suggesting that they wish that they could take in more knowledge than anybody else, because usually the person with the most information wins. And we go back to Charles Darwin in this lesson, which that reminds us that it's not the smartest or the strongest who survive, it's the most adaptable. And the benefit of you and I reading is reading enables you to simulate things without having to experience it. And reading and simulating enables you to adapt to new situations. And let's see. We also learn about Jim Rohn, who is Tony Robbins' mentor, and he explained the difference between a rich man's house and a poor man's house is the rich man's house has a library. And I've tended to notice that with my very successful friends. And, reading and learning and knowledge acquisition is nothing new in history. We learned that if you read the book By the Spear about Alexander the Great, way back in 300 BC, he actually used to travel with a library on his boats. So knowledge was that important to him. And the more you read, the more information you have, and good information enables you to have good judgment. Now, of course, you can lecture all day about the benefits, but a lot of people, probably most people don't read. I don't really know, but a lot of people I know don't read, and they have certain excuses as to why they choose not to read. Things like reading isn't important, too expensive, they don't have time. It's better to be street smart than book smart, which I don't even know what that even means. And my favorite excuse of all is when people say, yeah, but if you're reading, you're just gonna be spending all your time reading and not getting anything done. But Tai likes to push back to that pushback and say, have you ever heard of someone that has said, I spent my whole life downloading the smartest ideas in the world into my brain, learning from the most successful people in history, and it ended up being just a big waste of time? I don't think anybody's ever said that. Probably most people say they wish they read more. And again, that's what this whole lesson's about. But we learned that Sam Walton had his first store, I believe, in the 1940s, his first retail store. And I believe that he explains that he didn't read his lease correctly. And it was after 2 years of renting out that building and making over $200,000 in gross revenue, because he didn't read the lease properly, the landlord was able to rent it out to somebody else at a higher rate, and Sam Walton had to move his facility somewhere else. So that's the importance of reading and knowledge acquisition. So Ty challenges us to double down on the rate in which we're reading. And he says probably most people read about a book a month at best, but he wants to challenge you to read a book a week. And of course, in a world of, 15 million books or however many there are, not all books are equal. And Ty recommends that you go to his website, tylopez.com/books. I'll pull it up right now. And he has a list of the top 100 books he recommends reading in order of importance. And he suggests you start with those. And I love his idea of when you're learning from people, you always want to go straight to the top. You always want to only learn from the top people in the world and the most successful people in the world. And I'm plowing through most of those books, but it's taking some time. But then we move on to part number 2, which is making war with a multitude of counselors. And he explains that the importance of this is that anyone that's done anything really great in history has never done it by themselves. Successful people have CFOs, board of advisors, experts, coaches, psychologists, and paid consultants. They make war with a multitude of counselors because no one can be a specialist in everything. And, if you break your leg, you're not just going to go read one book about it and try to fix it yourself. No, you're going to go to the hospital and play the odds and be dealt with by the specialist. So he didn't touch too much on making war with a multitude of counselors, but we all know the truth that the more people you have helping you, the more you reduce risk and you increase the certainty of success. So Ty recommends with this reading that you divide your reading between the 4 pillars of the good life: health, wealth, love, and happiness. And I like this idea because it's all about balance. And I wanted to show you how he reads a book a day, because it may sound at first like he doesn't actually do that, but I'll show you what he actually does. Give me 1 second. Grab this. If you read a paperback book or a hardcover book, such as this right here, this book is like 300 pages or so. It's called Social by Matt Lieberman. And this is actually, I believe, maybe book number 5 or so on Ty's 100 top book lists. But it's a lot of time to think that you're going to read this cover to cover. And Ty recommends that isn't necessarily what you want to do. What he does is he actually first opens the book up and reads the inner sleeve right here, because this gives the overarching summary of the book and the hypothesis and the conclusions. And then he recommends right after you read that, you read the inner other sleeve right here, and that gives you the author's credentials and validates why you should be listening to them. And then he suggests you read the first chapter and the last chapter. The first chapter is going to give you a overview of what's to come, and the last chapter is going to give a conclusion on what the author learned through their studies. Because he explains that, a lot of people's books would only be 20 pages if it was just filled with the really important stuff, but no publisher is going to publish a 20-page book. So the rest of the book needs to be filled up with stories and anecdotes to kind of support the main thesis. But Ty explains when you're reading certain books, you're not looking to read every single word. You're a gold miner. You're just looking for one good piece of information from the books. And that's what speed reading does. And that's what he explains as that format. But so yeah, Ty wants you to double down on his on your reading and your learning. And his questions are, what's your biggest excuse for not reading? And what pace are you going to commit to? Thanks for watching. I'll see you on step number 10 of the 67 steps. Take care.